is leaving Utah about 6 in the morning. Yeah, this is what I want.
A man would keep an audio diary of his plans to kidnap and kill women in California and Utah, and he certainly intended to keep going. This is a very disturbing dude. Hello, true crimerers. This is the serial killer case. Oh, shit. Well, I guess I should put these on. Lord. This is the serial killer case of Phillip Carl Jablonski. Viewer discretion is advised. In the 80s and 90s, the city of Indio, California was basically a very desolate, underpopulated town that was mainly just desert and open area. It had a very, very small population, and crime just wasn't common at all, crime of any nature. The Vann family had moved to California sometime in the late 70s or early 80s, and it was led by patriarch Lionel and his wife Fathyma, and they had 2 teenage girls. Their names were Michelle and Yolanda. Sadly, in 1987, Lionel would pass away, so it was then left to Fathyma to, take care of and support the 2 girls. So she actually had become a CNA, but at the same time, she was going to a community college, and she went to a school called the College of the Desert. By the time she started school, her daughter Yolanda was old enough to also attend school with her. So normally what they would do is they would go to class together, they would come home together. But they had both enrolled in an automotive class, and a project they had been working on was to basically examine and take apart a car's engine. And Fathyma had offered her vehicle as basically the subject. So she, at that point, no longer had a car. So she was relying on Yolanda to take her home. But on nights where Yolanda wasn't in school or whatever, Fathyma would get a ride from someone else. On the night of April 22nd, 1991, Fathyma went to class like normal, and her daughter Yolanda was unfortunately sick that night, so she did not go to school. So Fathyma was going to rely on someone else in class to take her home. That night, Fathyma, she never makes it home. The following afternoon, on April 23rd, 1991, a woman would walk into the Indio police station to say that she just found a body in the desert. This is not super uncommon, of course, because deserts are unfortunately a place where people dispose of bodies, thinking they'll never be found, but this one was. When police arrived, the woman was an African-American woman, somewhere maybe in her 40s or late 30s. She was completely nude. The only thing she had on was a shoe, and that was only kind of partially put on her foot. Near her were some clothing items sort of thrown to the side, which they believed were hers. And other than that, there wasn't really much else. She was face down in the dirt. She had been basically mutilated. Someone had taken a knife and carved into this woman's back the phrase, "I heart Jesus." They actually carved an actual, the shape of a heart. When they flipped her over, that's when they noticed that she had a gunshot wound to her head, and she had just multiple stab wounds to her chest, to her throat. I mean, this was like a rapid attack. This was a very violent crime. Unfortunately, she did not have any identification on her, so they had no idea who this woman was. The night before, now back to April 22nd, 1991, Yolanda Vann had noticed that her mom had not come home after 10 p.m. And her mom was always home right around 10 p.m. The following morning, she wakes up. Fathyma's still not there. So she goes around, Yolanda, and looks around the area. She does her own search around the school, asks people, but no one has seen her since she left class the night before. So she reports her mom as missing. When police get a photo of the woman, the homicide team is notified, and that's when they realize that the woman in the desert was, in fact, 38-year-old Fathyma Vann. She had also been sexually assaulted. Once police found out who she was, they looked into her day-to-day life. They asked people at her work, they asked people at school, and no one seemed to know anything unusual about her. She hadn't been in any arguments with anyone lately. She wasn't in any kind of relationship with someone. She was just super well loved. I mean, she was a happy, bubbly person. Everyone loved her. And she had no enemies, and so police were like, well, crap, is this like a random thing? Which, as we all know, random cases are sometimes the hardest ones to solve. Pretty quickly, the trail on this went cold. You know, all they really had evidence-wise was the body itself. Where she was found was clearly not where she was killed. They believe she was dumped. They found like tire tracks near her body. They did find like some pulled out hair extensions, but those didn't they couldn't test that for any kind of evidence, like fingerprints or anything. Obviously, there wasn't any DNA left behind, so it was just like they don't know what to do. Now we're going to travel up north in California to Burlingame. On April 24th, 1991, a man was supposed to meet his two friends, Carol Spadoni and Carol's mom, Eva Petersen. They were supposed to meet for coffee because they met every morning for coffee. But Carol and Eva this morning did not meet them. They were a no-show, which is very unusual because they would at least call ahead of time, but they didn't. And then when they were a no-show again the following morning, that's when the friend decided to go to Carol and Eva's house because they lived together. And he knocked on the door. He didn't hear anyone respond. No one came to the door. He did hear the dogs kind of barking like crazy, and no one inside was responding to the dogs, which was also very strange. He felt something was wrong. So he called police, and when police arrived, they too did their cursory check around. Nothing super unusual, but there was a side door that went into the garage that was unlocked. So police opened the door and they went in. And when they did, in the garage, they found a body. It was the body of an elderly woman who would later be identified as 72-year-old Eva Petersen. She was completely nude. Her dentures had been knocked out of her mouth and were kind of near her body. She had a towel kind of like wrapped around her head, and then portions of the towel were like shoved down her throat. And that's when they also noticed that she had a bullet wound to her head. Another officer is looking around the house carefully, and when he gets to the living room, he finds a second body. This would later be identified as 46-year-old Carol Spadoni. She, as well, was nude. She also had a gunshot wound to her head, and she had multiple stab wounds to her body. Her head had been wrapped around with duct tape. These were two very quiet, very unassuming women who very much just kept to themselves. They kind of almost never left their home. The mother and daughter were very, very close. They were almost like sisters, according to many people. But again, they didn't have any enemies. Everyone loved them, to those who knew them, because again, they didn't get out much. So yeah, people just were kind of shocked by this. So at first, like, well, maybe this is a robbery gone wrong. But it was almost impossible to know if anything was stolen because their home was very cluttered, full of a lot of stuff. They were clearly hoarders. So determining if something had been taken was difficult. And other than that, police had no idea who would do this to two very, recluse women who didn't do anything to anyone and just sort of lived a quiet life. However, in all of the clutter, they did find a massive pile of mail. And in that mail, they found like 60-ish letters that all came from a prisoner in the California correctional system, specifically from San Quentin Penitentiary. That prisoner's name was Philip Carl Jablonski. Okay, why are they interacting with him? Is he still in prison? If not, where is he? Does he have anything to do with this? Don't know yet. So that was their mission, to find Philip Jablonski. Philip was born on January 3rd, 1946, and he was born in California. He did grow up in a troubled home. His dad was very much an alcoholic. The dad also was very abusive. He physically beat his wife, and then he would later physically abuse his children, and he would also sexually abuse his kids as well, including Philip. Philip, when he got to high school, he met a girl named Alice McGowan. They fell in love. But then in 1966, Philip would enlist in the Army, and he was pretty quickly sent to Vietnam. When he got back in 1968, he and Alice would marry. Alice, his high school sweetheart, after they got married, they moved to Texas. Unfortunately, Philip was a man who would, he was his father's son. He would sexually abuse Alice repeatedly. He would threaten her. He would choke her, suffocate her, to the point where she blacks out, and then she wakes up to him on top of her. So he was a bad guy, very bad dude. Thankfully, Alice was able to find a way out, and she left him. And this was in about 1968. Also in 1968, Philip would meet another woman. Her name was Jane. He took her out on a date. At the very end of that date, he sexually assaulted her. But she was super scared of this man, so she did not report him to the police because, basically he threatened her. And also, she got pregnant from the sexual assault. So she stayed with him, and they moved to California. And this was after he left the Army in 1969. He would continue to sexually assault Jane and abuse her. He would threaten to kill her unless she had intercourse with him. She also was lucky to get out. In 1972, she was able to leave him. That same year, shortly after she left him, Philip would sexually assault another young woman, and he did so at knife point. She managed to escape, ran to police. Police were able to track Philip down. He was arrested, and he was convicted of doing that. Surely he'd be in prison for quite some time, correct? No. He was released after just a few years in 1977. Shortly after his release, he met another woman named Linda Kimball. Fairly quickly after meeting, she would get pregnant, and then the little family would move to Palm Springs, California. And that's when he became violent with Linda. He would repeatedly abuse her, and at one point, he actually tried to sexually assault Linda's mom. Now, instead of going to police, the two women, Linda and her mom, decided, well, we want to help Philip. We want to help him get rehabilitated. So they actually bring him to the VA where he interacts with and meets with several different, doctors and shrinks. And they say that Philip, not only is he not in danger of ending his own life, they said he's not really a homicidal person either. He's not a violent man who's going to resort to murder. That's what we feel. So what they did was they gave him a bunch of medication, but they didn't really maintain that. They didn't make sure he was keeping up with it. They advised Linda and her mom to just distance themselves from Philip, which they do. But if he's not a violent person who's not going to kill anyone, why would you? It's weird that they would say you should get away from him. At any rate, Linda does get away from him, and they get a divorce, which this apparently, obviously, upsets Philip. But Linda had moved out, and she still had a lot of stuff at their shared home. So one day she found out that Philip was going fishing with his dad. So she takes an opportunity to go back to the apartment they shared, because he's not going to be there, to get, a lot of her stuff and a lot of the stuff for the baby, for the child. Unfortunately, when she gets there, Philip is still there. And as a matter of fact, he seems to have been waiting for her. Later that day, Philip's father goes to the apartment to get Philip for that fishing trip. And when he walks into the apartment, he finds Linda. She had been beaten and strangled to death with a leather belt. She'd also been sexually assaulted. Philip was nowhere to be found. But a couple of days after Linda was found, Philip would turn himself in after attacking another woman who he did not end up killing. But he turned himself in for the murder of Linda. So in 1979, Philip is convicted of second-degree murder for killing Linda. And he is only sentenced to 7 years. 7. In 1985, his mom comes to visit him, along with his dad, visit him in prison, where something happens, a fight breaks out. Philip then tries to strangle and murder his own mother, but thankfully the father pulled them apart. So he is given an additional 5 years on top of that crazy 7-year sentence. But here's the kicker. He still gets paroled early. He gets released early. He's released in the early time frame of 1990 for, I kid you not, good behavior. So he is just set out into the world. Just, there you go. Have fun. Police would find out that in 1982, Philip strikes up a pen pal relationship with Carol Spadoni. At some point early on in this pen pal relationship, the two of them, Carol and Philip, they get married. Even though he was in prison for literally killing his previous wife, she married him. So now back to the murder investigation of Carol and her mom. Police learned that just a couple of days before the two of them were found, on April 23rd, 1991, Philip was in the town of Burlingame, and he had been pulled over for a traffic violation, something like he didn't use a turn signal or something like that. So that's how they can confirm that Philip was, in fact, in the area during that murder. Police wondered why Carol would marry a man like that, and they would find out that apparently the whole thing started because Carol's church had come up with this idea of writing letters to inmates to see if, just to kind of share love with them, make sure they know they're loved, interact with them for whatever reason. And they thought, well, I can fix them. We can fix these people. No, you can't. Carol and her mom would actually visit Philip in prison, so they did interact physically. Carol would, in the beginning, meet for conjugal visits, which she brought her mom along the ride to do, I guess while her mom waited. But eventually, the conjugal visits stopped. This is because Philip was still sending letters to Carol, of course, and the letters were very sexual in nature, but they were very, disturbing. At one point, he even talked about wanting to do stuff sexually with Carol's mom, and get, kind of violent stuff. So Carol was getting she was scared now. So Carol stops visiting him. The conjugal visits stop. This sort of irritates Philip. When it comes time for Philip to be paroled, Carol is now afraid of him. So she works with the courts to make sure that he can't come anywhere near her. So they basically tell Philip that he is not allowed to be in Burlingame at any point after his release. As a matter of fact, they have him relocate and move to Indio, which we'll get back to that in just a minute. So now it's April 25th, 1991. Philip is on the run. He has now found himself at a rest stop in Wyoming, When he parks at the rest stop, he notices a woman. Her name is Yvette, and so basically Philip from his car kind of just sort of stalks and creepily stares at her, and he decides that, well, he wants to take her and do horrible things. So what he does is appears to be getting towards her car, about to leave. He decides, I got to do something now. So he gets out of his car, faces her, and then she says she sees the gun kind of go up, and then it falls out of his hand. So she takes the opportunity to go, oh my God, and she gets into her car and she flees. And then she goes to police. Police are able to actually pull Philip over not too soon afterwards. So Philip tells police, well, the gun, it was in my car, but as I got up to go to the restroom at the rest stop, the gun just fell out of my car. I'm just clumsy. Police bought it. They believed that. So they let him go. Now, to be fair, the bodies of Carol and her mother had not been discovered yet, so there was not yet a warrant out or a bolo out for this man. After those two bodies are found, that's when the warrant is put out, and at that point, they do get a warrant to search Philip's apartment. When they go inside, they found like clothing with dried blood on it. They find letters from Carol. They also discover that when he got paroled, they basically almost made him start to get an education. And he did so at a community college in Indio. It was called College of the Desert. The same exact school that Fathyma Vann was attending. Philip took a class in automotives, the same class Fathyma was taking. They would find out that Philip and Fathyma, they worked together a lot. And because Fathyma had volunteered her car for this project, she was without a vehicle. And because her daughter was sick on April 22nd, she had no other way home. So they pretty much figured out that it was Philip who gave Fathyma a ride home that night. So at this point, once all the warrants are out there and all the information is out there, they are now safely able to link the murders of Fathyma, Carol, and Eva all to Philip. They also confirmed that the bullets found in each of the victims were .22 caliber, and Philip had recently purchased a .22 caliber revolver from a fellow student at school. The student had no idea who Philip was, by the way, because no one did at that point. But now there is a nationwide search for Philip Jablonski. But sadly, he is not done. On April 27th, 1991, he now finds himself in Grand County, Utah. 59-year-old Margie Rogers is working at the little convenience store that's owned by her and her husband. And that morning, she opens the store herself, and she's alone. She was a loving wife and mother. She would never hurt a fly. She was as sweet as can be, and she was actually thinking about finally retiring from working at the store and just let other people work there. But unfortunately, it was the wrong place at the wrong time for Margie on April 27th, 1991. Philip Jablonski just so happens to be parked in the parking lot of her convenience store that morning. He walks in shortly after 7 a.m. after he had spent the first hour or so in the parking lot observing Margie, stalking her again, like he does. And he made sure that no one else was in the store. He picks out a few items, they get rung up. Margie tells him to have a great day. He then decides to turn around, pulls out his gun, and he shoots her. And then she kind of like reacts and falls down a little bit, and then he shoots her again in the head. He then sexually assaults her and robs the cash register, and then he leaves. The next day, April 28th, 1991, Philip has now found himself in the state of Kansas. A state trooper pulls into a rest stop in the area, and he notices a suspicious-looking vehicle with its hood propped up and a man sitting next to it. He kind of walks up to it and just sort of talks to the car's owner, he presumes. And something about the man just gives him the wrong vibes. Something about the car, something just feels off about it. So the trooper goes back to his car. He runs the plates of this vehicle he saw, which is a California plate, and it comes back to matching that of Philip Carl Jablonski. It also says the dude's wanted for murder. So the trooper doesn't want to just suddenly spring and cause him to, flee and get away. So he actually lets Philip kind of just sort of calmly leave the convenience store. He follows him. He then calls for backup on his radio and keeps tabs on the road of Philip. And then once backup arrives, they all kind of just swarm in and put on their lights, and they pull him over, and they arrest him. They finally got him. Police then got a warrant to search his vehicle, and underneath the seat, they find a .22 caliber revolver. They find dried blood all over the car. They find duct tape with dried blood all over it. They find a leather belt in the back seat. When they flip the belt over, Philip has himself a kill list. All of the victims that I've mentioned in this video were literally written on the back of that belt in pen. His most recent murder victim, Margie, I guess he didn't know her full name, so he just wrote her down as elderly woman. Then, most disturbingly of all, in the car they find a tape recorder. And there's a tape inside. So investigators rewind the tape to the beginning, and they press play. What follows is a series of recordings where Philip is stalking, about to kidnap, and his plans to murder these women. He records after he's murdered them. He keeps a audio diary of all of it. What you are about to hear are the actual recordings. These are just segments, pieces from each one. And I just want to warn you, they can be very disturbing for some of you to hear. So I just want to give you that fair warning. And I want to give you just another viewer discretion is advised. I'll probably be demonetized on this video for playing this audio, which is fine. But it's important you hear them. So here they are.
Just leaving Utah about 6 in the morning. Yeah, this is what I want. If I get a chance, I'm kidnapping this one. She's mine. First victim was 130 pounds, brown eyes, black hair. I was planning on killing her, but I didn't have everything I needed. Went back to the apartment I rented, got the gun, knife, taser, picked up my victim. Got to Dunshore, just about a block from Dunshore Road. I pulled the gun on her. I walked in, no problem, and I grabbed her on the throat. And I said to her, well, sweet thing, you leave me now, I was going to rape you, didn't you? I got up and hugged Carol. She said, don't try this, just cares for that gun. I said, you don't strip, I'm going to shoot you. And Monday night was her dying night and rape night. Looking this woman ahead of me is my next victim. I'm going to get this one alive if I can. As soon as these people leave, she's mine. Look at that. Gorgeous big woman. I'm losing her. She's getting ready to leave. There's 2 more that just went in the bathroom. I just walk in and shoot them and do what I want with them. She's got some great big old, nice big old. But I love this. And kill it. Leaving Utah about 6 in the morning. The sign saying gas and diesel truck stop ahead. Yeah, this is what I want. He asked if there was anything else I needed. I said no. Then I reached in my shirt, turned back around, shot her in the head. She fell to the floor. Walked around, opened up the cash register, took all the bills out, pulled the gun on her, turned around, told her, time to get raped, sweet thing. I seen that she had something I wanted, her body. I drove Burlingame about noon at Carol's house. I shot her right above it. I just turned the gun and shot Carol through the brain, through her head. Let her drop to the floor. She curled up. I shot her mother again in the head.
So those disturbing tapes would basically serve as a confession. The belt would also serve almost like as a confession. They find evidence that Philip was actually pen pals with 2 other women who he would have been on the way to meet and likely murder as well. So at least 2 women's lives had very likely been saved. So he was charged with 4 counts of murder in various counties because these happened in different places. He would go on trial for all of them. And in the end, he was sentenced to 2 life sentences for 2 of the murders. And then he got 2 death sentences for 2 of the other murders. But he waited in death row for over 20 years for some reason. And they never had a chance to execute him. He died of natural causes in 2019. At least he is dead. The dude was a creep. He was an absolutely disturbing creep. But that is it for this case. I hope you found it interesting. As usual, if you have cases you want me to cover, please email me at makingatruecrimerer.com. That info is found below and also in my link tree. Please go to my link tree to my case list first. Scroll through all the names. I know there's a lot. You can search as well. And if you see a name on there, then don't send me that name again because it's already there. If you don't see the name, then just email me really quickly the name, where it happened, when it happened. And then I can eventually add it to my list. I pick these cases at random, to be fair. So I could cover it the next video or 27 videos from now. I don't know. I have a lot more videos here on YouTube, so please subscribe, give this video a like, hit the bell and all that jazz. Got tons of videos here. If you're new to my channel, I'm more known for being on TikTok, where I had nearly 3 million followers. So also here on YouTube, I pulled over a bunch of videos and I put them in compilations. So I have a whole playlist that's called TikTok videos and compilations, where you can see just hundreds of videos that I've made over there in compilation form. If you would like to support me in any way, we do sell merch. We sell t-shirts and hoodies. We sell like a wine glass and other things like that. So we do ship internationally. The merch store is also found in my link tree. It's the best way to support me if you wanted to. You don't have to. And lastly, if you have a Discord account and you want to join my Discord server, it's also linked below in the link tree. Please be over the age of 18. Otherwise, it won't allow you to really go further. And if we find out you're under the age of 18, we'll kick you out. All right, true crimerers. Why do I sound like Mickey Mouse? My name is Molly and I sound like Mickey. Get out of here, you stupid shits. No one wants to hear. Bah, Molly, for God's sakes, Jesus. Sorry about that, you guys. Molly's a jerk. Ha! And she cusses at you people all the time. That was Roxy. She just dropped a major F-bomb, and she did it again. Well, she clearly does not like this. So bye.